have this one coworker who has been with the company since its inception. My boss used it to let her get away with bullying and harassing everyone in the office with no repercussions unless the animosity was directed at him. When it was directed at him, he would go full on passive aggressive and make her more insecure than she already is.
This woman is a real miserable bitch. God help the person who brought a mistake she made to her attention. The next 30-60 minutes, sometimes an entire day, would be dedicated to finding every mistake the poor soul made. She has been really sneaky about not doing her job and pawning her work off on others. She will busy herself with trivial shit and say, dealing with so-and-so took me over an hour, or I have a lot on my plate. I guess that slipped my mind. Would you mind handling it? Yesterday, I figured out one of her tactics. Someone needed a letter of on-time payment from their previous provider to have their deposit waived. One company has a dedicated broker line for us specifically. They have stated before to please email for letters of on-time payment. Do not call the broker line as that is for emergencies. When she was pressed about a task that needed a letter of on-time payment, she said she emailed the client and said a conference call was in order. She was told by several of us that was not the proper protocol. She knew this, but she did not want to send the email because that is too much like work, so she danced around the issue. Only thing, I called her out on it, and it didn't work this time. She spent more time arguing than it took for her to send the flipping email. My boss even got in the Slack conversation and told her to stop arguing and do her job. That is all she ever gets. Got a little slap on her meat hook of a hand. She proceeded to rip me a new one in a personal Slack and told me what a cunt I am, blah blah. I copied that Slack and went back through the other Slacks. She sent my personal channel calling my boss a bald bitch, saying she didn't blame his wife for cheating on his cheap, rude ass, calling his son a piece of shit, calling him an elitist butt crack, etc. I sent all of those to my boss and told him I think her language is rather unprofessional and don't appreciate being called a C word. I really don't care. I wanted him to see the stuff directed at him. He sent a Slack saying he would be a few hours late this morning. We all work from home. He drove to her house, fired her, and collected his office equipment. As prideful as she is, of course, she didn't tell a soul. He came in, set up a Zoom, and told us Negative McGee is no longer with the company. Petty AF and I don't give any fucks. Oh my, I had no idea this would get so much attention. I guess everyone has experienced their own version of Negative McGee. Oh man, this poor kid I used to work with at Wendy's. Kevin. He was a juvenile delinquent. He was a few years older than me, little bit bigger than me, had nasty tattoos on his neck, and supposedly was out of jail on work release. He tried to be a tough guy and bully me whenever we worked together. Stuff like generally talking smack unprovoked, getting real close up in my face, and that stance where you puff out your chest and pull your arms back like you're gonna swing. The most irritating was when he would walk right up in my face, then flinch like he was gonna throw a punch at me, then just laugh and say some rude crap. I got along with just about everyone at work, and he did somewhat, but we just did not fit together. One day the exchanges between us were so apparent and obviously stressed, everyone working was talking about me fighting him. I dispelled these rumors as I wanted to keep my job, but my destiny on this day said otherwise. First was the backdoor incident. The store had a large back door with a peephole in it, and it could only be opened from the inside. There was a buzzer outside that employees would push if they wanted back in. Well, Kevin was locked outside and his patience while awaiting his re-entry had run out. Instead of tapping the buzzer, this guy was mashing it and holding it down, while everyone inside went nuts. We were all busy, and I was running to the back to grab some heavy boxes. Holding these boxes, I was going to open the back door while I walked past. I tried to push on the door, but it wouldn't open. I leaned into it but couldn't push much more, because of the boxes I was holding. I was in a hurry, so I yelled, "Get back, I'm gonna kick the door!" He did not hear me over the loud, constant buzzing. I gave that door a swift, "This is Sparta" kick, and it opened about 3 inches, then bounced closed again. Tuff! I kicked it again, and it opened, revealing a bashed and somewhat upset Kevin. He had been trying to look in the peephole when I kicked the door. I had just broken the crap out of his nose. Like the tip was almost touching his cheek, bright red purple, swollen eyes. Broken. He was pissed. Immediately, I started apologizing and backing away from him, but he came at me like a rabid monkey. Quickly, we were surrounded by employees and separated. I was told to go up front and manage fries, and to not come into the back part of the store until Kevin left to the hospital. Then the final event, less than 10 minutes later. I was working the fries, which entails grabbing a metal basket out of boiling hot oil and dumping the fresh fries into an adjacent tray. I was doing this and everyone around me was talking about how I just broke Kevin's face. On his way leaving our store for the hospital, he decided to come right up to me again and try to instigate a fight while I was dumping some fresh fries. Kevin pulled his signature move of flinching at me like he was going to throw a punch. I retaliated by returning my own flinch with the basket I was holding. I didn't actually hit him with an incredibly hot fry basket, but I forgot about the boiling hot oil still clinging to the basket. When I flinched at him and shook the basket, tiny flaming hot drops of grease splattered his face and neck. I had just broken his nose on accident, then threw boiling hot oil on his face on accident. Instant fight, on the ground. I'm a wrestler, so his freshly broken and burned nose was just smashed and wiped across a dirty floor for a few seconds before it was broken up. He was an absolute mess. He left for the hospital. I got sent home. That was it. No charges, no questions from my managers. After. No more being scheduled with Kevin. Not even any paperwork about 2 vicious assaults and fights in the same day. I felt really bad, but simultaneously kinda justified. Both incidents were honest accidents which could have easily been avoided if he weren't such a jerk. I still felt like the outcome was worse than reasonable. What important discoveries do most people not know about? The material was taken and translated from Reddit. Happy reading. 1. People can be carriers of mad cow disease without knowing it for decades. Those who ate the meat of diseased animals became infected with prions that could destroy the human brain. And now, there are a lot of prion carriers, but they don't know about it until the symptoms of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease begin to appear. The incubation period is long and can be up to 50 years after ingestion of contaminated meat. You can also become infected with prions through a blood transfusion. So in Britain, you cannot be a donor if you received a transfusion of blood or blood components between 1980 and 2004. The first symptoms of the disease are cognitive impairment, memory loss, and hallucinations. Death usually occurs a few months after the first symptoms. There is no cure for the disease. 2. There are now 70% fewer insects in the world than there were 40 years ago. We are really approaching the moment when there will be as many insects in the spring as in the winter. Many people say that there will be fewer pests, but they are not the ones you need to worry about. Pollinating insects are vital to many crops, and we could soon see supplies of some foods dwindle. In recent years, China has experienced problems with the harvest of apples and pears, to such an extent that they began to be pollinated by hand. In addition, insects are the start of many food chains, and their disappearance would be a problem for living things at higher trophic levels. 3. An apocalypse due to a large coronal mass ejection from the sun is quite likely. Such super emissions occur approximately once every 500 years. And if the next emission covers the Earth, it will destroy all telecommunication systems, electronics, and computers. All satellites in orbit will immediately turn into scrap metal, and our civilization will roll back 200 years. The most famous example of this phenomenon was the Carrington event in 1859, when a severe magnetic storm made telegraph operation impossible throughout the Northern Hemisphere. The worst thing is that people have no idea what to do in such a situation. They will go looking for an answer on the internet, but there won't be one. As a result, chaos will break out very quickly. 4. In November 2018, an impact crater with a diameter of 36.5 kilometers was discovered in Greenland. This is the result of the fall of a cosmic body. It is believed to be 12,000 years old. If this is true, then this event completely changes our understanding of how often mass extinctions occur. Suddenly, myths about the global flood, giant ancient monuments, and other mysteries are built into a theory about the regular destruction of the planet's population and thousand-year cycles of knowledge loss and restoration. 5. Evolution has endowed people with an effective learning algorithm, but it is embedded in a very slow biological computer with low data input speed, reading, speaking, etc. But if you implement this algorithm into a computer chip, then there is a high probability that artificial intelligence will emerge that will very quickly surpass humans. We will be as far away from the capabilities of general artificial intelligence as we are now from a mosquito. And to destroy us, AI does not need to be evil. Its comprehensive competence will suffice. He will be extremely good at achieving his goals, and if they do not coincide with our goals, humanity will have problems. And this could very well happen in the next decade. 6. I live in Malaga. This is in Spain. Our area is not characterized by high seismic activity, but about once every 100 years there are destructive earthquakes here. And the next one can happen at any moment. We have been building multi-story buildings for a long time without taking into account the possibility of a strong earthquake. And when it happens, these houses will simply collapse. And no one cares. This topic was discussed and it was recognized that it would be necessary to strengthen the structures, but this is very difficult, time-consuming and expensive, so they left it as is. I sold the apartment on the 20th floor and bought a house in the suburbs. It would be better for the roof to fall on me than for me to fly from the 20th floor. 7. I am a neuroscience major. You wouldn't believe how unreliable our memory is. We've conducted experiments, and an alarming percentage of participants sincerely believed that they remembered or experienced something that had never happened to them. We still don't know how our memories are encoded, how our brains decide what to keep and what to get rid of, and why we remember some events clearly and forget others. We don't know whether each memory is stored separately or whether we remember the entire pattern. From what we know now, the mental images of many of our childhood events are fabricated, and the reality was not at all what we think